Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Ada Punjabiha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Shri Radha Madhava ki, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki. Jaya Om Vishnupada Pramamsa Parivrakacharya Astotara Shata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, BBT Founder Srila Prabhupada ki, ISKCON Samstapakacharya Srila Prabhupada ki, Mantra Upasaka Srila Prabhupada ki, Senapati Bhakta Srila Prabhupada ki, Preeminent Shiksha Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, Savior of the whole world, Srila Prabhupada ki. Jaya Om Vishnupada Pramamsa Parivrakacharya Astotara Shata Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki. Premsa Ko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki. Shri Shri Gopa Gopinath Shama Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan ki. Vrindavan Dham ki, Mayapur Dham ki, Ganga Maya ki, Yamuna Maya ki, Tulsi Maharani ki, Sama Vyata Bhakta Vrinda ki, Gaura Premanande, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 25, text number 14. You can repeat after me. Prakaro Pavanatala. Prakaro Pavanatala. Parikaid Aksha Toranai. Parikaid Aksha Toranai. Swana Ropya Yasyai Shringai. Swanaropya Yasyai Shringai. Sankulam Sarvato Grihai. Sankulam Sarvato Grihai. Prakaro Pavanatala. Parikair Akshatoranai. Swanaropya Yasyai Shringai. Sankulam Sarvato Grihai. Prakaro Pavanatala. Parikair Akshatoranai. Swanaropya Yasyai Shringai. Sankulam Sarvato Grihai. Prakara, walls. Upavana, parks. Atala, towers. Parikai, wood trenches. Aksha, windows. Toranai, wood gates. Swarna, gold. Ropya, silver. Ayasai, made of iron. Shringai, with domes. Sankulam, congested. Sarvata, everywhere. Grihai, with houses. Purport and translation by Prabhupada. That city was surrounded by walls and parks, and within it were towers, canals, windows, and outlets. The houses there were decorated with domes made of gold, silver, and iron. Purport. The body is protected by walls of skin. The hairs on the body are compared to parks, and the highest parts of the body, like the nose and head, are compared to towers. The wrinkles and depressions on different parts of the body are compared to trenches or canals. The eyes are compared to windows, and the eyelids are compared to protective gates. The three types of metal, gold, silver, and iron, represent the three modes of material nature. Gold represents goodness, silver, passion, and iron, ignorance. The body is also sometimes considered to be a bag containing three elements, three dhatu, mucus, bile, and air, kapha, pitta, and vayu. Yasyatma buddhi kunape tri dhatuke, according to Bhagavatam 10:84-13. One who considers this bag of mucus, bile, and air to be the self is considered no better than a cow or an ass. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanjana Gaurangi Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priya. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The translation again. That city was surrounded by walls and parks, and within it were towers, canals, windows, and outlets. The houses there were decorated with domes made of gold, silver, and iron. Hare Krishna. as the chapter is entitled, The Characteristics of King Puranjan. And as we know previously, Narada Muni had come to visit Prachinabhari, the father of the 10 Prachetas. And Prachinabhari was someone who was engrossed in karma kanda activities, particularly the slaughter of animals. And so Narada Muni came to give Prachinabhari enlightenment. But Prachinabhari wasn't intelligent enough to directly digest philosophy, Vedic philosophy. And so Narada Muni has decided to make up a story using Vedic knowledge. And he's compared the body to be a kingdom, the kingdom of 9 gates, where the eyes, the nose, the ears, the mouth, the rectum and the genitals are the 9 openings of the body, which represent 9 gates of the kingdom. And Puranjan is the king of the of the kingdom of 9 gates. And we hear in today's verse this elaborate description of how attractive this kingdom is supposed to be. But in the end, what Narada Muni is describing is dead matter, because he's talking about the body. As we know in the 3rd canto, Lord Kapila, he gives an elaborate description of how the body is made up of several elements, 24 elements. 5 gross material elements: ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And from that develops the knowledge acquiring senses: sound, touch, sight, taste, and fragrance. And then the sense objects are developed: the eyes, ears, nose, mouth, the tongue and skin. And then you get the working senses: the 2 arms, the 2 legs, the vocal cords, the genitals and the rectum. Altogether are 20 elements. Then you have 3 subtle elements: mind, intelligence, and false ego. And lastly, you have the time factor, and altogether there's 24 elements. But all of these elements which make up the body is considered to be dead matter. And the body only comes alive when the presence of the spirit soul is there. In Vedic philosophy, in Krishna consciousness, the foundation of our knowledge is to know that you are not the body. I'm not the body, you are not the body. But sometimes people get sick of hearing, you are not the body, you are not the body, you are not the body. Especially when it's during a Sunday Love Feast class. During the Sunday Love Feast, we get new people who come to the Sunday Love Feast program, and And sometimes we get Hindu people who come for the Sunday Love Peace program. So when they hear this, you are not the body, you are not the body, every Sunday Love Peace lecture, they get tired of it. One time, I happened to be present, and someone was saying that they're getting tired of hearing this, you are not the body. And they were saying that in some other monastery, someone was giving a class about Garuda Puran, because Hindus like the Garuda Puran. Garuda Puran is about, it gives you information about Yamaraja's abode, and it tells you some details about funerals. But particularly, people are fascinated by one chapter of the Garuda Puran. It's entitled Signs of Sinful Reaction. And there it tells you what the symptoms may appear on your person as punishment of something that you may have committed in a previous life. For example, sometimes you may find that people, their fingernails are discolored, and it's described that what it means is that in the previous life you may have stolen gold. Another example is if someone is born mentally challenged, having a learning disability, it means that in the previous life you were constantly listening to blasphemy again and again and again and acknowledging it. And so in this life your intelligence has been taken. And we can see how modern society progresses. People are actually becoming less intelligent. But nowadays, thanks to Ananta Prabhu, who is in charge of the Sunday Love Peace lectures and topics and so on, we get to hear things other than you are not the body. You are not the body is the foundation of spiritual life. Unlike the people who want to listen to Garuda Puran and hear about the symptoms of sinful activities, all of those topics are related to the body. When one comes to Krishna consciousness, the foundation of Krishna consciousness is you are not the body. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains to Arjuna the field and the knower of the field. The field is the body, and the knower of the field is the person inside the body, the spirit soul. One time His Holiness Bhakti Priyad Bhagavad Swami was giving a class about the early days of Prabhupada's preaching in the West. And one day he was describing that one day Bhakta Keet came to Prabhupada, and he came to Prabhupada and he asked, Prabhupada, Swamiji, I just can't understand how can I understand that I am nothing? Bhakta at that time was reading Buddhist philosophy, and he came to this to the Buddhist ideology that everything comes to nothing. And so Prabhupada looked at Bhakta and told him, you are not nothing, you are something, but you're not this body. That something, as we know, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. That something that inhabits the body is the spirit soul. And the Sanskrit word that's usually described, that's used to describe the soul is called Atma. Just like Paramatma, the super soul. But this word Atma is a complicated Sanskrit word, because based on the context and grammar of the sentence, the word Atma can also refer to the mind as the self, and it can also refer to the body as the self. In Vedic culture, it describes that there are 8,400,000 species of life, of which 400,000 species is human life. That means that 8 million species of life is non-human. And these non-human species of life formulate an ecosystem which makes the world self-maintaining and self-cleaning. For example, there's an insect called the cockroach. Nobody likes that one. But the cockroach has a function. And that function is that it breaks down waste. What's the number one thing that the human beings create in this modern world? It creates waste. And so where there is waste, there will be cockroaches. If the wastage is too much, even for the cockroach, then material nature will send a different kind of living entity to break down waste. Material nature will send a rodent, a rat, and that rat will break down wastage. There are other animals that make the material world look pleasant, makes you want to stay. In the West, you get white sand beaches. And the white sand that you find at beaches is different from sand that you would find anywhere else. And it's different from the sand that you find in a desert. But that sand is not, you can say, not naturally occurring, because in the ocean there is a fish called the parrotfish. And this parrotfish, its diet consists of eating stones and coral. That's the only thing that it eats. And so if it's only eating stone and coral, then it's passing sand as stool. And this sand is what gets washed up onto the shores, which formulate the beach, the vacation spot. And basically, it's described that scientifically that at least 70% of the beach is made up from the stool of this parrotfish. But the human form of life is special because in the human form of life, the consciousness of the soul is not suppressed. The consciousness of a human being is able to learn or understand higher topics. The human being becomes self-aware. And the human being can act against the natural ecosystem of nature. Human beings desire happiness, and usually that happiness comes in the form of material sense gratification. But we find that every time we try to be happy, it always leads to suffering. In the 7th canto, towards the end, Prahlad Maharaj, after the pastimes of Nrsimhadev, Prahlad Maharaj is now the king. He's a young man. And he has this desire to travel around the universe and meet various kinds of saintly persons. So him and his confidential associates, they begin traveling around the universe. And one day, Prahlad Maharaj had found a hobo lying on the ground. He was lying there doing nothing. And so Prahlad Maharaj went to speak to him. And in his conversation with this hobo, Prahlad Maharaj discovered that this person is actually not a homeless person, but is actually a self-realized soul. And so he began inquiring some information from this nameless, saintly person. And if you read or heard the pastimes of Prahlad Maharaj when he was a child, you will know that Prahlad Maharaj doesn't mince his words. His father asked him, "What is the source of your power?" Prahlad Maharaj said, "The source of my power comes from the same source as your power." His father asked him, "Is the Supreme Lord in the pillar?" Prahlad Maharaj said, "Yes." So in the same way, Prahlad Maharaj was inquiring some information from this nameless, saintly person who looks like a hobo. And he was saying that, you are homeless. We have no wealth. You are lying on the ground. You have nothing to eat. So how come you are fat? That's what Prahlad Maharaj is asking. And so the saintly person understanding that Prahlad Maharaj is a pure devotee of the Lord, begins to answer. And he says that he was just an ordinary materialist, always striving for happiness. But that happiness always led to suffering. And so he decided to just give up trying to be happy. And then he said, after taking the renounced order, only then he became content with himself. And he gave the example that if a person is looking for water and right next to him there is a well of water, but that well of water is covered by grass. So when a person is looking for water, he can't see the well. So he's looking for water everywhere else except for the well. And what the saintly person meant was that happiness is already inside you, but it's covered by the material body. And so when you start looking for happiness, you look for it everywhere else except within yourself. And so the saintly person was explaining that once he had discovered this happiness, he stopped trying for external sense gratification. And he became completely satisfied with himself. And so he said that if he gets something, he is satisfied. If he doesn't get anything, he is satisfied. If someone gives him food, nice prasadam, he is satisfied. If someone gives him stale food, he is satisfied always. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5:13, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is saying that one who renounces action can live within the kingdom of 9 gates happily. So if one wants to be happy, one has to practice renunciation. Because when one becomes happy, one time a devotee gave a class and he was giving the example of how happiness and sadness works. Like at the end of this purport, it mentions an ass. An ass is a donkey. And he was saying that during winter, the donkey sees that the whole valley is covered in snow. And the donkey thinks that, wow, look at all the grass I've eaten. He becomes proud, becomes happy. He made an achievement. And so what happens to the donkey? Because he's happy, his body starts expanding. the donkey becomes fat. However, when winter is over, there's no more snow, the grass grows, then the donkey sees the valley and he says, there's so much of grass, how can I possibly eat everything? The donkey starts becoming distressed, how he's going to eat all of this grass. And because of being in distress, the donkey starts shrinking, becomes small. So when one becomes happy, the body will expand. Sometimes we find this happens with devotees also. Once they come to Krishna consciousness, when they come, they're usually very slim. But afterwards, they become happy. The changes in the body is directly related to the mind. And the mind is also understood to be Atma, the self. One time there was an article about an electrician who was hired to fix a cooler. And somehow this electrician had locked himself, or he had gotten locked inside the cooler. And then the next day, when they opened the cooler, they found that this electrician had left his body, he died. And after some investigation, trying to find out why he died, did he freeze to death? And the investigators had found that this electrician had come to fix the cooler. The cooler was broken. And that means it couldn't be cold inside the cooler. So this person couldn't have died because of freezing to death. And they came to this conclusion that because this electrician was locked inside the cooler, this electrician started panicking. I'm going to freeze to death, I'm going to freeze to death. And because of this, he kept telling himself that he's going to freeze, that the mind influenced the body, and this person had passed away just like that. We see in society that people sometimes pass away because of depression. That is the power of the mind. When the mind becomes too influential, it affects the body. So much so that it can kill you. In Bhagavad Gita, the mind is described as the sixth sense. Just like the other material senses, where you can see or touch and taste, the mind also produces a a similar kind of symptom, which in the broader sense means it produces emotion. Of which the most important is called fear. Now, usually fear takes a negative connotation. But fear is, you could say, is like a superpower. With the right information that goes into the mind, the mind circulates that information. And so when you enter a place and it gives you a bad feeling, which is called intuition, which comes out as fear, the mind is producing a warning that it's telling you that there is danger around and you should do something about it. However, if you have the wrong information circulating within the mind, then this emotional response, which is called fear, doesn't take place when it should take place. And this causes accidents to happen. And so the mind is sometimes called a friend or an enemy. If you feed the mind the correct information, then the mind becomes a friend. But if you feed the mind corrupted information, the mind becomes an enemy. The mind is very influential, especially now in modern society. In today's world, we have something called video games, and it's developed more and more, so much so that there's something called character creation. The main demographic for video games is usually men. And so you find that men will enter this a particular game and they'll do character creation. So instead of creating a character that is male, they'll create a character that is female. They will take their time, what kind of hair to put on this female figure, what color it should be, what kind of dress. They can spend hours and hours doing so. And then they will play the game as a girl, not knowing that they are influencing the mind to create this kind of designation for the future. And the same goes for women as well. They may watch, or in the Western world, they call this term where women want to be treated as Disney princesses without actually having the qualification of being a princess. And so people using deductive reasoning and who are looking at these Disney films, these movies, and they found that these characters in the Disney movie are sometimes based on mental disorders. For example, there's a rare disorder called Klein-Levin syndrome, KLS. And what it does, this mental disorder, is that it causes the person to sleep for prolonged hours. So someone can sleep for 20 hours or more without breaking. And so they compare this to a Disney movie. Such as Sleeping Beauty. Similarly, there's another mental disorder which is called body dysphoria, where one becomes dissatisfied with their own body, so they want to change it in order to fit in elsewhere. And we see in the Western world that men want to become women want to become men. Some people want to identify as animals. There was an article of a man who wanted to identify as a wolf. And so he bought a wolf costume and he bought some meat and he decided to go into the forest to join a wolf pack. And so he tried to interact with the wolves and he failed. Instead, what happened? The wolves attacked him. So much so that he landed in hospital. And the only reason why he stayed alive was because he was wearing the costume of a wolf. And so which Disney movie represents body dysphoria? The Little Mermaid. She doesn't want to be a mermaid anymore, she wants to be a human being. So one can imagine as a parent raising a child, probably tired of interacting with a child, so you decide to put the child in front of the TV, put on a Disney movie. There's nice song, nice dance, defeat the bad guy, and happily ever after. but the child doesn't know, and the parent doesn't know, there's something else that's also being planted in the child's mind. It can be a mental disorder. And so through deductive reasoning, we have to attempt to realize to some extent that we are not the body. Only then can we make progress in saving ourselves from our own mind. Prabhupada would use the example when someone passes away, they always say, he is gone or she is gone, but the body is there. So who's gone if the body is there? And so through deductive reasoning, we can understand that the person and the body is different. Similarly, people who are amputees, they had their limbs removed. They say that they can still feel the functions of their body. They don't have a hand, but they can feel that the hand is there. Through deductive reasoning, one can understand that the body is more like a machine, and the person who's controlling the body is different from the body. Sometimes we may be engaged in some work, and then we get bruised or hurt in some way. But one can go on the whole day not realizing that the body has been damaged. And only when the work is done and then you look and you see that the body has been hurt, you become conscious that the body has been hurt, and you look at the wound, and only then does that wound start to exhibit pain. Before that, you didn't feel any pain. But now that you've become conscious of it, then it starts to pain. So through deductive reasoning, we can understand that the body and the person is different. So when one becomes advanced in Krishna consciousness, they can go back home, back to Godhead. They can obtain a spiritual body, a body that is very similar to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As described in the first verse of the Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. Sachidananda Vigraha, the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is full of eternity, knowledge and bliss. And so when one goes back home, back to Godhead and obtains a spiritual body, he'll also have a body that is full of eternity, knowledge and bliss. However, the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is even different from what we understand what a spiritual body is, according to the Shastras. The Supreme Lord can exist within himself and he can exist outside of himself. Just like that picture over there, where Mother Yashoda is looking into Krishna's mouth. The coward boys played a prank. They tattle-taled to Mother Yashoda that Krishna has eaten dirt. And so Mother Yashoda comes and she looks into Krishna's mouth. And when she looks into Krishna's mouth, she sees the whole creation, from Brahmalok to the 14 planetary systems, to Jambadvip, to Bharat Barsha, Mathura, Vrindavan, Nandagram, until she sees herself looking into Krishna's mouth. And so we learn that Krishna's body is a paradox. He exists inside himself and he exists outside of himself simultaneously. Another example is given in the 12th canto, the pastime of Markandeya Rishi. Markandeya Rishi is a brahmachari, Naishtiki brahmachari. And he pleased the Supreme Personality of Godhead that the Supreme Lord appeared before him to give him a boon. And so Markandeya Rishi asked the Supreme Lord that he wants to understand how Maya works. And so Krishna, the Supreme Lord, granted his wish. So one time, Markandeya Rishi was in his ashram, and the time for dissolution of the universe began. And he could see everything. You could see that the weather changed. It was full of thunderstorms and rain. And you could see oceans on all sides, flooding everything around him. And he got washed up by the oceans. And this ocean was the Garbhodaka ocean. At the time of annihilation, the Garbhodaka ocean covers all the planetary systems when Brahma goes to sleep. And so Markandeya Rishi, he got washed into this ocean. And he'll be pushed and tossed by these huge waves. And when the waves push Markandeya Rishi deep into the ocean, the Garbhodaka ocean, it's described that Markandeya Rishi had seen, the Sanskrit word is nakra, which means sea monsters. He had seen huge sea monsters big enough, well, bigger than this planet even, all lying inside the Garbhodaka ocean. Became afraid. And while Markandeya Rishi was being tossed and turned in the ocean of devastation, he happened to come across an island in this ocean. And on this island was a banyan tree. And on the banyan tree was a leaf And on that leaf was a infant version of the Supreme Lord. And this infant version is described to be sucking his toes. Now Krishna wants to know why everyone wants to be by his feet all the time, so he's tasting his own feet. And so Markandeya Rishi tries to swim to this island. And no matter how much he tries to get close to this island, he cannot. But the Supreme Lord notices Markandeya Rishi in the ocean. So he stops sucking his toes. And then the Lord, in his infant form, decides to breathe in. He takes a deep breath in, and he begins sucking everything into his mouth. And Markandeya Rishi also gets sucked into the mouth of the Supreme Lord. And so when Markandeya Rishi enters the Lord's body like this, he sees the whole creation, how it began, how it's maintained, and how it's destroyed. And his mind becomes devastated, that he blacks out. And then when he awakens from consciousness again, he finds himself back in his ashram like nothing happened. And then Markandeya Rishi goes out to see the world just to verify if he was just dreaming. And then he realizes it's now the next day of Lord Brahma. So the body of the Supreme Lord is very different from the material body, but it's also very different when the living entities get a spiritual body. But the main lesson of this class is that you are not the body. I'll stop over here. Any questions or comments? Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.